It was a classic pitch of like, we want you to interview someone from our team. We came back to them and said, how fun would it be if we showed up to your office in Richmond, Virginia and did it? And then we said, what if we did it with 10 other people from your company all in 2 days and we could create this whole content series? How fun would that be? But ultimately it started as something much smaller. And then we kind of slowly got them to believe in this idea of what we were doing.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Members Room. My name is Alex Thiakos, and today we have two very special guests, Geno Schellenberger and Jack Westerkamp of Breaking and Entering Media. In this episode, we discuss how Geno started his podcast in his basement during COVID, grew the following, and later him and Jack joined forces, quit their jobs in Chicago, moved to New York, and are currently growing one of the fastest media companies in the city. Can't wait for you guys to hear it. Let's get into it. Welcome, guys. Thank you for hopping on. This is the first episode of Members Room podcast. You guys are the founders of
Breaking and Entering Media. Yeah.
So do you guys want to take me through the origin of the podcast initially?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having us. This is awesome. And usually we're asking the questions, so it's nice to be on the other side of things. Jack's really good at that too. And we're pumped to be here. So, origin. Breaking and entering advertising. Think about this. It's 2020. The pandemic is happening. And I'm a senior at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I've studied advertising. I'm all in. My goal is to break into the ad agency landscape here in Chicago. A Leo Burnett, a DDB, an FCB, to be an account manager there was always the dream. And I worked really hard all throughout college to meet that goal. I did everything. Every decision I made in my academic career was to break in as an account manager there.
Now, what drew you to advertising in college initially?
2016, I watched Mad Men. Roger Sterling. They were smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol at 11 a.m. after they did a client meeting, all in advertising. That's what the show's all about.
That's exactly what real life is like, right?
Exactly.
Just drinking,
exactly.
smoking, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Having fun.
Cigarettes inside.
Just like Mad Men.
Yeah.
In our office, that's what it's like. That's
for sure.
brother.
We did it. And then I also cheated in a pre-calc test and got caught. I had to take and the teacher liked me. I basically said to the teacher, I don't want to do pre-calc. Once they said SOHCAHTOA, I'm out. I was cheating. I put it in the graphing calculator.
Oh, yeah.
You know that?
Of course.
He's like, show me the work. I'm like, I can't. I cheated on that. So he put me into accounting. My dad was like, you should go into accounting. And then I connected the dots that I wanted to go into account management within an ad agency. So that's where the Mad Men and the business world, the creative side, the business side of advertising is the best industry in the world, I would say. So that was my North Star. They plotted that out. But then throughout college, was doing that, like president of the ad club, had internships there, was like managing like 50 like agency and like student employees of this ad club at University of Illinois. So that was great. But the North Star was always to get into an agency. I got a job at Edelman lined up in the first semester of my senior year, which was awesome. And I was going to rotate around. Edelman's a large PR company. They do like advertising adjacent stuff. So I pretty much did it. I was going to rotate around for a year as this immersion associate program. 1,600 applicants, only, I believe, I think 8 people got it. So like I did it. I broke in, second semester hits, then the pandemic happens. They kind of like furlough me. Is that the word that we just learned?
Furlough, yeah.
Furlough.
It's like when you get a job but then they push off the start date in the context of like your situation.
Yeah. So I was furloughed. And so I was looking at like I didn't know how much time I was looking at in March 2020. Like I didn't know when my start date was going to happen. It ended up being 8 months. So I'm sitting at home in my parents' basement watching Tiger King. And I'm like, this show sucks. This is like a weird time. What can I do to fill my time?
To be productive.
That's productive.
Good, yeah.
To help out the next generation, help my coworkers, help my friends. Because I know I have a job at some random undisclosed time. So I started Zooming. I started having networking calls, and the idea hit me to start a podcast. You can hit record on the Zoom, I noticed, in like those stupid happy hours, those virtual happy hours we were doing. And I was like, this is it. So I So I went to my ad club friend Buchin Zhang to create the first logo. Ended up being over 5,000 assets. We worked together every single day, still to this day. And we launched the first episode April 16th of 2020, where I just started with my friend, who is the co-executive for that ad club that we were in. Just talked with her. April 16th, that show released, and it was awful. A cat ran across her keyboard. We were drinking during it. The editing is awful. I sounded awful because I was like super heavy. I was like drooling and stuff in college.
Yeah.
And like my voice was just awful. But I almost deleted that episode. I just made a LinkedIn post about this. I almost deleted it that night because I thought I was going to get banned from the industry. Imposter syndrome. I like woke up in a cold sweat, and I opened the laptop, and I like had Spotify for Creators open, and I almost hit delete, and I just shut the laptop. And I talked with her about it, and we kind of came to this conclusion that this thing is going to be a documentation of process and progress along the way. I am not the expert. You right now are not the expert on your first episode, but you are going to share the stories of experts, and it's going to help the audience. So I just stuck with it, and every single week post an episode, interview with somebody in advertising to give advice to the next generation. That's the origin.
And how did you, consistently every week get a new person in the advertising industry to come on? Because it's a lot, every week an episode.
Yeah, start with your friends, start small, like what you're doing now with us. And then when you're done interviewing, ask them, who else should you talk to? Referrals. And I put it in the Calendly. I put it in there in order to like book, you had to put in 3 names of people and their emails. So then I just would hit them up. And then at worst case scenario, I just go back to some of my like closer friends, some recent alumni, 2 to 3 years older from University of Illinois that are in advertising. And then it started the snowball effect and bigger guests. Every guest is amazing, right?
Yeah.
But some have bigger titles.
Now, you did this for how many years until you kind of got to the point where you were like, maybe I want to do something bigger than just a podcast?
Yeah. What was it? Like around the 4-year mark? Because we're 5 now. Yeah. So it took 4 years to go full time on it. But the real mark was when I started that job at Edelman. I thought about also stopping it then because I broke in.
Yeah.
But then I just kept it going because it was a creative outlet, a passion project. I could have easily stopped it starting full time, and it actually was like therapy for me. Like, the stressors of career in corporate America. So I kept it going. But I've always kind of had those inklings, like, what could this be? Like, I don't really know. But also, there was an opportunity about 2 years in where we were able to, like, secure a deal. And, like, there was money involved. So that's where I called Jack. And that's, like, our first foray working together on Break Entering. But we know each other a lot longer than that.
Okay, so Jack joined in 2 years in. Years before you started the media company.
Yeah, before we both went full time on it.
If you guys want to talk about when you first started sponsorships.
I do remember it quite well. The deal that Geno's referring to is like the University of Illinois wanted to promote their grad program for advertising via a sponsorship on Geno's podcast, which is amazing. But Geno was like, I don't really know how to like make a slide for a proposal. At the time, I was working in consulting. I have a finance background. Like Geno said, we grew up together. We were living together. So I was very well aware of what Geno was doing with the podcast and was obviously well informed on all of that. What I was not well informed on was how to make a slide for a proposal. But I definitely didn't tell Geno that when he asked me to help out. But at the time, like I said, I was working in consulting, so I could freaking slap a logo on a slide and throw out some different pricing options and different bullet points and make it sound good. So that's how we started. I wouldn't say that was like, okay, we did that, like, let's go hardcore now. I think from then on, though, we just kind of, as things would come up and opportunities would present themselves, it was like, okay, let's focus on this for a little bit. That's cool, nice, fun. Next thing, 7 months later. But that was certainly the introduction to it. And then the big milestone after that was right before we decided to go full time, which would bring us to March of 2024.
Okay.
And that was a big moment, and Geno can kind of talk about that his perspective from kind of like that big transition inflection point. That like it's like the cinematic. This is as cinematic and dramatic of a moment that we've had so far, where it felt kind of like a movie scene of, okay, this just happened. Let's go full time. Like we're gonna go do it. It obviously wasn't that dramatic at the time, but looking back, it was the inflection point. So now that I've properly teased this very vague moment, we can talk maybe more about it.
Yeah.
I just want to step back for 1 second. So once you first got your sponsorship deal with the University of Illinois, what other sponsorships or money was involved that you guys are like, okay, maybe we can actually make something of this?
Not much money. It was more of like people reaching out and pitching guests on the show, more inbound pitches.
People were coming to you instead of you going to people.
Right. Remember I was telling you I was reaching out to my friends and then asking that like other people. Well, then the real moment when there was interest was when like PR professionals would be like pitching Geno, like, hey, like, can I get this person would be really good for the show. And that was like more and more of those pitches are coming in. If I show you my email now, there's a bunch of pitches like the CEO of X agency would be a great fit. You want to meet him. So those started to come in more and more.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Now, if you guys want to start talking about the inflection point, and when you first transitioned and you guys were like, you know what, let's take the leap of faith and go full time.
Yeah, I was working at Havas Chicago. I mean, I've never missed a week of posting an episode. That is like
for 4 years.
Yeah, since I started April 16th of 2020, we have never missed an episode published. And that's thanks to help from Buchin, Mikey Malarkey, who did the audio editing from my hometown. He was a SoundCloud rapper. He's still a part of it. Our good friend. I played Lombard Falcons football with him. You went to school with him. It's like we had a good team, like good people with capabilities that could help produce it. But essentially, when I was at Havas Chicago, I was leading PR and communications and new business for a big ad agency at a young age because of the show. And then they had this, like, there's award shows in our industry, like best agency, small agency of the year, or like number one creative director of the year. And then there was an award show, a pretty notable award show called Campaign U.S. Agency Awards Show. Campaign U.S. Agency Awards. And they had an entry for Young Advertiser of the Year. So I was nominated into that, and I got the invite that I got a notification that you have been shortlisted. You've been nominated for Young Advertiser of the Year. Come to New York and you might win. And I go to my boss, the CEO and president of my agency at the time. I said, I got this thing. Would you like to come with? And she goes, I would love to. I can't. I'll be out like I'm busy that day. But you should absolutely go. If you win this thing, it'll be awesome. Well, I'm like, well, I can't go alone. Can I bring a +1? Can I bring a friend? And then she goes, yeah. So I invite Jack. I'm like, come on, like skip work a little bit.
Yeah, brother. I was playing hooky. I was like, let's go. I'll take a free trip to New York. And so, yeah, it was sick. I was pumped about it. And I just told work that I was either sick or I probably just didn't. I should have just stopped responding to people for that day.
Yeah, didn't you say it was like a kid's? Your brother is having a kid or something, or
yeah, because like my brother's
grandma's funeral.
Yeah,
it was grandma's.
Yeah, there's always it was like
yeah,
it was my 8th grandma's funeral.
Yeah,
year at the company, and on number 9 they started to maybe get a little suspicious, but I got the invite to go with Geno to this award show, and it was much less about like, and obviously it's great that Geno won this award, but it was much less about that. It was much more about being in that room where these are like all the biggest names in the advertising industry in New York, and Geno knew all of them, and they all like really liked Geno, and they all were coming up to him and like gravitating towards him and all that. And I don't think Geno really understood that was the case at the time. But for someone like me, who's coming from, I was working a normal consulting corporate job, if all of the biggest names in consulting were all in the same room, they would have no idea who I was. There would be no interest at all. Like no one, no CEO, C-suite of any industry would have any clue what the 23-year-old at their company or who they are or at any other company would be. So seeing all that was kind of the big thing of like, okay, there's clearly momentum here. You have a lot of really solid connections. I don't know what the business full-time would look like, because like we were talking about earlier, we had the one Illinois sponsorship thing, but it wasn't like we were making really any money.
You're going into the unknown. Like you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, totally unknown. And no recurring revenue, nothing in the works even. But we were like, I think that there's something here, and let's figure out what a business could look like that's centered around creating content about advertising and marketing, knowing that we have all this momentum behind us. And so that's when we just spent the next few months creating the business plan and reaching out to everyone we knew in Geno's network and our networks adjacently to be like, hey, we're going to go full time on this, and just talking to as many people as possible about what we were doing to A, get validation, and B, get feedback as to how this could become a business. So that preparation period was fantastic, and that kind of led us to making the jump and then raising some money.
Now, when you're thinking of like you're creating this advertising content creation machine that you have right now, how did you kind of think of how am I going to make money from this? And are there any other companies that you kind of wanted to shadow off of, or, mirror and base off of as kind of like similar companies that you could do? Because, I mean, who really thinks of like, oh, a media company, we're going to start just making content and make money? Like, how do you jump into that?
We had a new idea for how we were going to make money every single day when we were planning. And so the point of that is that we had no idea how we were going to do it. There wasn't really like, we couldn't look at a certain company. Maybe every day we would look at a different company and be like, oh, they're doing that. Maybe we could figure that out. Or maybe we could do advisory for other people's podcasts. Or maybe we could consult agencies on their social media shit or how they do it, their strategies. All that to say, it was much less about how we were going to blueprint the exact way we were going to make money. It was more so having the confidence and learning as much as we could about the industry and what we were doing to set us up so that we could try and experiment a bunch of different ways of making money until we found something that worked or people gravitated towards.
Now, what were those few ideas you had to make money, and which ones stuck, and how did you make your first like big check up to this point?
Yeah, the ideas at first, there was like, the ones that kind of did stick was PR consulting. So we leveraged Geno's background in doing like comms and new business at Havas Chicago, coupled with the relationships that he created with ad trade journalists, to pretty much use that as leverage to go to agencies and say, we can do PR advisory, which essentially just means we can put a value on Geno's relationship with these trade journalists to help you have a better chance of getting your story out there. That was one. And then the other ones along the way, and honestly, the one we thought of early that actually has been our biggest thing has been working directly with agencies to create content about them. So doing, you target an agency and you say, we're going to do podcasts about you and social media content about you and your people, with the idea of it driving potential new business, given the audience that exists on Breaking and Entering, which is a lot of like the clients that they're trying to reach. It's a more personal touch, and it's a more thing that they can own versus just trying to get an article written about them in the news. And so by doing that and partnering with them directly, that's been a huge way to drive revenue.
Yeah, there's a lot of agencies. There's 15,000 in the U.S., and they're all competing essentially for the big name brands. So how does a client, let's say like a General Motors who needs a new ad agency, how do you figure out about the people there? In an industry that there's such high turnover rate where people are moving around left and right every couple years, how do you make that decision? There's a whole businesses built off that. So we believe content, showing up to an agency, showcasing their people, the work that they're doing, getting in there, making videos, having a little fun with them, telling their story is a great way. It's just one of the tools that a big brand can use to figure out what agency they want to work with.
Now, do you want to talk about some of the clients you have visited? Because I see you guys have been visiting. You've been in LA, DC, visiting all these different clients. And what kind of content did you make for them?
Yeah, the first one we did was at a terrific ad agency in Richmond, Virginia, the Martin Agency, which is a Hall of Fame agency. Geico, like the gecko they came up with.
The caveman, all that stuff. Yeah.
What else? Like the term Virginia is for lovers. Like they came up with it. Kristen Cavallo worked there, who's an industry legend, and it's just basically like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory for advertising in Richmond, Virginia. They just are just. I always wanted to work there. Everybody wants to work there. So we went to them and the relationships that we had, and we basically did it at cost and like just to really get that out there first and foremost. And we did like 10 episodes, 10 long form podcasts in 2 days. And that was a big learning for us. Like that's too many long form podcasts, I would say. It ended up being, they were all great, but then they'll also then refined it to, well, the strategy should be less long form, more social. Right. There's just a balance between, what's more effective there.
Well, then from like a business standpoint, and something that you could probably take with you regardless of what you're doing is we were trying to sell agencies on something that hadn't existed before, which is having a third party come in and work with them to create content about them. That's not something that really exists in the advertising industry, and let alone having them pay for it and partnering with them on it. And so when you're doing that, you can't expect anyone to pay for something that they have no testimonial on, that you don't have an example of. And so with that, we had to get someone to do it, but we knew that we couldn't really charge them anything.
Yeah.
And so we had that self-awareness. And that's, I think, a big lesson too, is it's really important when you're doing a new business or when you're an entrepreneur to be super persistent and confident. But I think what people miss out on is you also need to have a healthy dose of self-awareness to be able to like see an idea and quickly be honest with yourself as to whether or not is this a good idea that just needs a little bit of time and a little bit of refining, or is this a shit idea and I need to move on from it and try something else? And so we had that healthy mix, and we had enough validation that this agency partnership content stuff would work. So we just knew we had to refine the communications, maybe brand it a little bit differently, and then find the right partner to where we could have our first break-in series with, so that we could use that to leverage for future agency partnerships, to be able to say, we did it with the Martin agency,
which is huge,
which is a great agency. Here's what we did with them. Look at how great this looks. You could look like the Martin agency. And then you can start to think about, the prices and how you get money and all of that. But ultimately, you just have to solve a problem first.
Yeah. I was going to ask, I mean, you guys got such a big client for your first one. How did you guys nail that offer for them to actually give you guys money to come in? Like, what was so special about your offer that they were like a no-brainer for these guys to come here?
I don't know.
Geno's reputation in the industry, it initially started as them. It was a classic pitch of like, we want you to interview someone from our team. You want someone on the podcast. Like, we have a spot in New York. We have an office in New York. You should interview someone there. And then we turned that into, we came back to them and said, how fun would it be if we showed up to your office in Richmond, Virginia and did it? And then we said, what if we did it with 10 other people from your company all in 2 days, and you helped us get there, and we were able to stay in Richmond for a couple of days, and we did all this other stuff for you, and we could create this whole content series. How fun would that be? And so it started as a really small thing, but then it kind of just evolved naturally, and we had a good relationship with them, of course, and so they trusted us to be able to put it together. But ultimately it started as something much smaller, and then we kind of, slowly got them to believe in this idea of what we were doing. And we didn't throw it all at them at once. When they asked us to do it, we weren't like, no, let's do 10 episodes. We slowly built up to that. So it was a progression.
Yeah.
Now I want to shift over to how you guys raised money initially for your company. And I know, Jack, you come from a finance background from University of Illinois. You got a finance degree. You worked in consulting. And how did you... what was your pitch to the investors?
This was the best learning experience of my life in the finance world, and it was the easiest pitch probably for an investment that we'll ever have, because we were pitching friends and family. So for us, if you're a business that isn't a tech company, you don't have IP, proprietary stuff that you've already built, it's pretty much impossible to try and raise money pre-revenue.
It's on a promise.
Yeah,
I'm going to make you money one day. Yeah.
And so the only asset that Geno and I had at the time was what Geno had already done with the podcast and the content, the consistency, the reputation, and then what our personal relationships were with friends and family and our reputation generally. So you're using that as the asset that you're leveraging against to raise investment money, where people, I mean, we did all the right things and we put in the effort around like a business plan. But if I looked at that business plan now that we went out and told investors this is kind of what we're thinking, it would make no sense right now because we're not doing any of that stuff. And everyone understood that. It was the idea that they're not investing necessarily in this revenue stream. They're investing in Geno and Jack.
Yeah.
And so we're fortunate enough to come from a place where we have friends and family that have the disposable income to invest in us. We only raised $54,000 to start, which I know
that's a lot.
Only in term is obviously super subjective, but that's spread across like 30 different investors that are all friends and family, and then a couple like industry friends. But raising the money, the pitch, like I said, is you have to base it off of what you've already done. And then what you have to sell a dream, and you have to sell a vision, and you have to have a roadmap of reasonable steps to get to that vision, to get people to a place where they're comfortable taking the risk for a potential future, return on their investment.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's much easier doing that with friends and family because they have a lot more, they're a little bit more, they're not as, like we would go out and we'd be like, this is the riskiest investment you'll ever make in your entire life. Like you should expect to not get your money back. Like, if you want to make money on your money, go to the stock market, put it back in your retirement account. So you have to be super honest at the front. Yeah. Like that's the biggest thing, is having that transparency.
If you're up front, people are more likely to give you money. If you tell them, hey, you're probably going to lose it, but if you want to invest, instead of saying, oh my God, promising you're going to make so much money. Yeah. They trust you more if you are up front and say, this might not work,
Yeah. One fun thing we did was the Secret Investor podcast.
Yeah.
That was fun. We knowing our strong suits, we worked really hard for the 100 days leading up to the launch, building the business plan, getting the investors. And I remember Jack and I were working in our old office, my old office, after hours. And we went into the studio and we, doing what I do best and what we do best is we got on the mics and we put it on SoundCloud, a conversation about our game plan, the business plan, what that roadmap is, 20-minute secret recording on SoundCloud that you only, if you had the link to it, you can listen to it. Otherwise it wasn't public. So we recorded that and we sent it out to the investor, potential investors too. And they listened to it, and some people said they listened to it, they loved it. I edited it a little bit, and it was just us and our voice, and I got a lot of positive feedback.
How many yeses and how many nos, and how many pitches did you guys do?
I probably ended up emailing or pitching to probably 50 to 60 people, and then you got 33 yeses.
That's pretty good, actually.
Yeah, which is great. And I would never fault anyone for not investing or not doing it. I fully understand that side of it. It's just the people that you catch that are in the good enough financial situation and they are willing to make that risk, that money, and people are just in different situations all the time. I will say that we did try to pitch, non-friends and family, people outside of our personal relationships, and those were all no's. Immediate no's.
We went to a VC
close.
fund.
Yeah, it was a guy that ran a VC. He was just a friend of a friend, and we were so pumped about it. It was this is going to be it.
I think VCs, they need to see numbers.
Oh yeah,
right.
No, this is not a VC business at all.
No, not at all.
Because it's not a rapidly scaling business. VC is all about, you throw a lot of money in a lot of different places, and one of your bets is going to go crazy.
Yeah.
And our business isn't one that's going to scale up to $1 billion business in 4 years because we have this proprietary AI technology. So it's kind of funny looking back. We were so naive at the time.
We didn't give up though, on those no's and stuff. So that was good.
Now, when is your next raise, and how much do you guys want to raise?
Nope, no cemented plans for a next raise. That's something that we're learning is such a fickle thing because you want to grow the business as much as you can organically without having to bring in other investors that could, fluctuate the capital stack. But at the same time, you're so ambitious and you're so ready for like this insane growth, and you're like, oh, if we just had, all these different hires, and we had all this equipment, we had all this access, like, then we'd really take off. But nothing like cemented for any sort of raise in the immediate future. But it's always in the back of your mind, and there's always reasons to raise, and there's always reasons to not raise. So it's going to be a matter of waiting for the right time whenever it feels right.
Mm-hmm. Now I want to shift over to how you guys built your team together in New York. So you guys raised the money. Yep. You moved to New York, got your apartment. How did you develop a team and connections in a city you guys aren't too familiar with? I know advertising's huge in New York. Yeah. And you've probably interviewed quite a few people from there. Yeah. So how did you kind of get assimilated there?
Well, you have to remember, so the target audience originally when we built this was the aspiring advertising professional. And that hasn't really changed, but the target audience of people listening are like young, creative, like art directors, copywriters, editors. So we're talking to like who we want to hire and like bring on. So I built this network of like hundreds of listeners, and we've actually just over the years, I made a lot of good friendships. Like when I would go and speak at universities, and I still do that, and I would talk to college students, and they'd be like, I want to be a part of this in some way, shape, or form. So they would volunteer, or they would just help out, and I would help them get jobs. And like, we're still friends to this day, and they still offer up their time. So that we had like a cohort, like going into New York, like Buchin, who I mentioned, this chief creative officer, he hasn't left. Like, he's been with us since day one. He's the bounty hunter. But eventually we did have to find some people. Jack, remind me, like, we had to open it up. Was it just through our LinkedIn and stuff that we kind of found?
I made a LinkedIn post one time that was like, I'm looking for someone that can edit clips. Yeah. And that brought a lot of, people that were interested. Creating the team when you're new, when you don't have a lot of money, because we only raise a certain amount, and like the revenue is lagged when you start going full time, because it takes a while for the sales cycle to come through. And so we were like, you could lock in something in September, but you wouldn't get the money until like December. It just takes a while for the sales funnel to work. So with that said, when you're strapped for cash and you're like, you don't know what to do, but you need help right away, you just get freelancers, and you get people that are like working very part-time.
1099, just guys you pay one-offs.
It's like, and it's all relationships that we have. So it's like great because you have people that know the brand and all that. So it's not like we're going like a Fiverr or like, just a random person. Mm-hmm. It's like a young, probably someone in college that has a light course schedule, that has experience doing the stuff we need them to do, that has time on the side. And you get like 7 of those, and then you have a team, and you have everything, like all the roles are filled, but it's like it's the way that it has to work, and it's probably not the most efficient way, but for us, we're willing to do that because we still needed to be super involved in everything that was going on, so that we were able to master it, to create the processes around it, and B, it's just way better from a budget standpoint, flexibility standpoint, when you can be very, very meticulous about the hours and people's schedules. So that's what it boils down to in the beginning, and then you mature from there.
Yeah. So if anybody listening, like, we have like an audience of like those younger freelancers that can help them out. So we're happy to like post some job postings for any of like your next guests and stuff. If they need like a new logo or anything like that, or somebody to help
just
out.
Go to Link Creative for that.
Go to Link Creative too. Yeah.
Now, you have this team. What have been the struggles with, managing all these different people, making sure they get stuff done on time, correctly?
We're the worst. It's the worst thing. We're so bad at it.
We suck.
We are so bad at managing and direction and setting up people for success.
Emotional intelligence.
Organization. Like
process.
Yeah. Feedback.
Vision.
charisma, teamwork, all these
Vocabulary.
things. It's the hardest part, and it is it's a lot of like, you know, people say push and pull, but you just don't, you never know if it's like, was this not a success because I wasn't clear enough in direction or vision, or is there a communication problem on my end because I'm not getting everyone on the same page? And ultimately, when you're running a business, you have to take full accountability for anything that doesn't go right. But it's the hardest part, and we're learning how to get better. And every time like the team does something well, or we all execute and everyone does their
Jack
job,
takes the credit. He's like, that's because of me, everybody.
oh, another big win for Jack. Jack does it again. But no, it's the hardest part.
Yeah.
It's really a challenge.
I don't know how to do it. I mean, I've been listening to like Nick Saban audiobooks. I've been listening to like John Wooden, trying to study like good coaches, and I'll never figure it out. Jocko Willink, like I've studied it all. I mix and mash. I got like a Frankenstein like leadership approach, and it just does not work.
But the one thing I will say, the constant, we have improved from the beginning, and it's mainly driven by building a relationship, building trust with the people that you're working with. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, you need to get all these people, and it's especially a challenge for us because we have people who are all in our current situation. They're all doing it part-time. They have other more important in their lives. They have other things that are more important priorities.
For sure.
So you have to get everyone to be on the same page and be in the same boat and like trust each other, because you're bringing in all these different people who don't really know each other, and you just have to get everyone to like trust and communicate and become friends with each other, and then it makes everything so much easier, and then you can stay on the same page and communicate. So that's the one thing I've learned is for sure, like for us, like maybe this isn't the case at like a big corporation, but for a really small business that's in startup mode, you almost need to be friends first before you can start delegating tasks or working together.
Yeah. Trust is huge in the business.
It's huge. And it's trust. It's having confidence that someone else is going to come through on their responsibilities. And it's ultimately like everyone being motivated and wanting to succeed for like a higher purpose.
Yeah. And
when you're doing like a part-time gig and you got like Geno and Jack, we're the only two full-time employees, of course, priorities aren't going to be aligned. Like this is for Geno and I, this is like everything.
It's life or death.
It's life or death. And so if you're a part-time employee, I'm so thankful that our team has like really attached themselves to the mission and are like, we're all on the same team, and they've really adopted the mindset of how fun it is and how great it is to be together. And so we're super appreciative of that. But I know that like there's other people that have businesses, and it's like you hire like these random freelancers, and it's super hard to maintain a culture or build a brand when it's so fragmented across different people.
And what are some of your other struggles you're having right now, or when you first started, when you first got to New York, kind of the growing pains you had within the business?
I think that the team stuff and leadership has been the hardest thing consistently. I think when we first started, it was locking in, like, how are we going to make revenue? How are we going to like figure out this business plan and what's working? How much time do you spend on an idea before you give up on it and like quit fast or fail fast?
Push or pivot.
Exactly. Yeah. So like feeling those things out, and those were like really difficult in the beginning.
I remember the first day we started full time after we quit our jobs. It was a Monday, and I remember, we were still working in our tiny apartment, and I remember going to Starbucks to just like work from the coffee shop for a little bit, and like freaking out all day because I was like, we had no direction. It wasn't like we had work to do. We had to like create work for ourselves, because that's what in the beginning when you're trying to like, you know, get sponsors or partners or do new stuff, you have to create the work for yourself to get people to be interested. And so I remember just freaking out and being like, I have no idea like how this is going to work. But at the end of the day, you have confidence that it's going to come through. But definitely the hardest thing at first was, to Geno's point, like, what's a good idea? What should we spend our time on? Because as soon as we started, that clock started ticking. Like, we had $53,000, and we figured that would last us 5 months. So we have 5 months to start making some serious money, or else we're done. And thankfully it's been 7-8 months now, and we've grown a lot, which is we're fortunate for. But in those first month or two before things started really taking off or things started happening, it was a battle to try to figure out what your day-to-day looked like.
Yeah. What are the biggest pieces of advice you'd give to someone starting out? Just like where you guys were a few months ago.
Okay, so like in September, like when you start full time.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have that like freak out moment because like what Jack was saying, like because I just figured like us working together and being consistent, like working every day, like I kind of had like, I don't know, I just had that confidence early on. Like people already believed in us and like invested in us, and we built this thing over 4 years at the time. Like I just knew like if we stayed consistent and knowing his superpowers, knowing my superpowers, and like our relationship as buddies, like as long as we're gonna work 8 hours a day, 5 days now, I was pumped because no longer 2024 was the hardest year of my entire life. I was getting my master's degree. I was teaching at the University of Illinois online. I was working at Havas all at the same time. And then there was a period where we were also working on breaking and entering kind of like in New York. So full time as well. That was like this crazy culminating moment where it's like too much. And then that moment we were free, September 15th.
You got all that time back to do what you wanted to do. Yeah.
It was like, it cleared up, and like that focus and consistency on one thing now, like I had all the confidence in the world. I don't know what other advice there is, but
I mean, for us, we have very specific advice because nowadays, like we're all about creating content, and our main KPI as a business is like impressions and views and reach and all that. So from that standpoint, like you have to, and maybe it's applicable for everyone, but like you have to do something different than what's out there. Mm-hmm. I saw this video of Mr. Beast, and he talked about how he's like, creating content is like when you go on a highway and you're looking out the window and you see a cow, like that's fine. You don't really think anything much of that cow. If you're driving on the highway and you saw a purple cow, you would stop and be like, what the fuck is that? And then you tell all your buddies about it, and then you text all your friends that you saw a purple cow. So when you're creating content and when you're doing something and you're thinking about how do I really separate myself, like you really have to go above and beyond. It can't just be a little thing. It has to be like a fundamental difference in what is currently happening and what your competitors are doing. And so for us, the biggest example of that is we talk about advertising news in 60 seconds or less every single day. Mm-hmm. Advertising trade journalism specifically is extremely dry. It's stale. It's writing. It's articles. And that's just how it is. And that's how it is in any really trade journalist, media entity.
B2B news, yeah.
And so for us, we're like, what is the most ridiculous way we can talk about the news? How can we be as different as humanly possible, but still get people to the same end result that they get when they read an article online or about advertising, or they scroll through their newsletter in the morning? So for us, it was talking about news in 60 seconds or less, which is the most different thing of all time.
And the sound effects and the noises and all that, the way Jack edits in the CapCut, all that is awesome. And I think also it's like, if you're just starting out, like get the fundamentals probably locked in a little bit sooner, like get your accountant, get like your legal figured out, just so that you have a strong foundation so you can have the confidence to experiment. Like I know, like that's where Jack was really creative and was able to be experimental. He had like that confidence where I was kind of like worried about like, is this set up legally? And that kind of like set me back creatively. So I would say for like somebody like myself, a little bit more type A, like get those fundamentals down right in the beginning so you have that strong foundation. Then you will feel better to create more.
Yeah. I love the 60 seconds or less videos for you guys watching. If you haven't seen it, it's a more entertaining newsletter. Like you get an email from a company, they have their news for the week, but you just usually click over it or delete it, right? Yeah. You guys are on like Instagram. People are going every day, and it's super entertaining. And I think that's great that you guys do that.
And we curate it. There's so much news even in the advertising marketing space. There's a lot of headlines every day.
Every day you can fill it. Yeah.
Every day, every morning we start off consistently. We sit in the office. We talk about the article headlines. We read them all, and we say, which ones do people actually need to know about? Let's save them time, give them something that they can start their day with to better their day, to help them break in, to help them get that next promotion, maybe land a new client. So we curate that. And we also do a little bit of analysis. We sneak in there. We connect the dots from past 60-second news and okay, the Omnicom IPG merger, this is what happened last time. This is where we're at. So if you are consistent with it, you actually are building up more and more knowledge.
And the biggest thing, the biggest thing that we've learned or what's mattered the most, and this is easier to say now that we've gotten revenue and stuff is happening from the business perspective. But at first, to what we were talking about in the beginning, all we were focused on was how are we going to make money? What can we do to make money? That was the only mindset. I was like, how can we get someone to pay for us to do this? Mm-hmm. And then once you started just focusing on the content,
how you're going to add value.
Yeah.
Not even money. How am I going to add value? Money comes after.
We were let's talk about 60 seconds of advertising news. No one was paying us to do that. We had no reason to believe that we would make money off of it, but we were solving a problem. And so the problem was that advertising news is dry and boring and people don't want to spend the time to read an article. Mm-hmm. The solution was, we're going to give it to you in 60 seconds and we're going to make you laugh and we're going to make you enjoy and get excited about advertising.
Yeah. Easier said than done, though. When that runway, when you're looking at that clock, you start full time, right away, you're going to be thinking about the money. And
of course, yeah.
I wish we can go back in time and tell ourselves, focus on the content. And people know that, but hearing that and living through that is so important.
Now, to cap this off, because Jack's got to take a flight back to New York in a few hours.
He's got to run the business back.
Someone's got to run the damn business.
What does the future look like for you guys? Anything new coming up you want to share?
I mean, the biggest thing that's about to happen for us is so there's the Cannes Lions Festival. Happens in France every year for advertising. It's the biggest event in advertising.
Oscars for advertising.
It's like the Oscars for advertising. It's the biggest thing. It's a whole week. So we're going to that, which is a huge milestone for us to be able to partner with someone to bring us to Cannes. So that's a milestone that will set us up for a long-term goal. That's really to be
So someone invited you out there?
They invited us a partnership content to do content about them and their agencies.
Nice.
So that's huge, and that's going to set us up for a long-term thing where we are a media company that is the number one place to go to for news and creative industries. So when you think about a Morning Brew, they're a media company that creates content mainly just around general business. We want to be niched into marketing, advertising, and then the adjacent industries: production, film, beauty, fashion, music, PR.
Yeah. All those.
So we'll be that. We'll be that kind of media source.
The first screen they check, these creative business professionals in the morning, they look forward to it. They turn on notifications. They want to start their day. They want to check in with us and see what's going on in their industries to better their lives and, get promoted. And we want to work with sponsors that also want to help them and be successful too. So that's what we're kind of building towards. Maybe a little social agency arm too.
And the main thing is going to be, it's being personality human first. I want similar to people think of breaking and entering, and they at this point now think of Jack and Geno, because we really put our faces out there for the 60 seconds.
You guys are the brand.
Yeah, and all the content. My dream is that there's people that are oh, I follow PR news and it's this person. It's this person. They just so happen to be a part of breaking and entering. Mm-hmm. We want to be one of the first B2B trade news outlets that is human first, because you don't know the name of any reporter for any trade journalist unless you're have to know them.
You're in PR.
Yeah. Unless you have to.
Yeah.
But we want to be the first that's human first, similar to how it is in the sports and entertainment industries.
Woj bombs.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Thank you guys for coming on today. Where can people find you at?
Follow us on LinkedIn at Breaking and Entering Media. Turn on post notifications. You will love the 60-second news every day.
And then
it's kind of entertaining. Yeah, it's kind of entertaining.
At Camp Westerjack, I'm looking to get my follower ratio up, Thiakos. So
yeah. Hey, I look forward to your 60 seconds of advertising, and I'm not even in advertising.
That's what's
Boom,
up.
baby.
That's what's up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, man.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys, and thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for stopping by.